Shabbat Shalom. Everything keeps getting more tense. After the events of last week, I'm wondering if I should practice my chair throwing skills, just as the rabbi down there in Texas. Many years ago, I was on vacation in the Sinai desert at a resort, and I heard from a group of other tourists there that they were going to visit Mount Sinai. Time I didn't know you could visit Mount Sinai. And they said, well, we're going to St. Catherine's, which is a city next to Mount Sinai. But I wasn't, I remember, not that drawn to go with them, actually. And despite the throngs of tourists that eventually I saw were going to visit Mount Sinai, I thought, well, Mount Sinai as a physical location has never been that important to us Jews. We've never gone on pilgrimage to Mount Sinai. In fact, we do not even really know where it is. The current site was found by Catherine of Russia in the 4th century, and they built monasteries there soon after, but never a synagogue. There was never a synagogue there. What we know is, the Midrash says that Mount Sinai was not a grand mountain. In fact, it was the most humble of all mountains. It could have been any of those desert peaks, of which there are many, many in that part of Egypt and of the Middle East. But it's not really why finding that place is not of supreme importance to us. And that is because more important than a physical place, Mount Sinai is a spiritual location and place for us. It's that place of revelation, that place of experiencing the divine, and that place of receiving new inspiration and of receiving new Torah. A mountain that each one of us, through the course of our life, is called to climb. And it really is essentially a personal endeavor, even though as a Jewish people, as a community, as a whole, we hold that place of new Torah, of divine meeting within our communal being. In the medieval ages, Rabbi Yehuda Halevi wrote one of the most important philosophical books of our tradition, the Kuzari. And it was at a time when all the monotheistic faiths were in competition against each other. Which is the true faith, Islam or Christianity or Judaism? And in his book, he posits a king who is none of those, and he asks sages of all the religions to come and convince him to be that religion. Why is your religion true? Why Judaism, according to the Kuzari, is the truest religion, I don't think is important to get into right now. But what he does come back to, and what's the essence of his argument, that it all goes back to Mount Sinai. All of Judaism is really about what happened on that mountain, as we read today, when it shook and the fire came out and the people waited and they were ready for God to speak to them. But after God spoke to them, they said, please don't speak to us anymore. Speak through Moses. Because it shook them to their core. And as the Torah says, Ha'am kol ha'am, all the people, every one of them, Ra'u et hakolot, they saw the voices, their senses were so jumbled from all of it, it wasn't an ordinary experience. And as the Midrash says, they were just transported out of where they were. And when they came back, they weren't the same people who were there just a few days earlier waiting for it to happen. They were transformed. Because they'd received enough of a measure of holiness, of new thinking, of new ideas, of a whole way of life that would take millennia to digest it and to hold on to it in all the ways that they would be called to do so. And yes, afterwards came all the laws, law after law after law, but the laws were just a concrete expression of what it meant to be living from that place, from that state of mind. In the end, Mount Sinai, as we read today, is perhaps what makes us unique and different than other religions. And it's also the main point of contention between the different streams of Judaism. Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, so on. But the truth is that what we disagree on with other Jews is really the details of what happened. But most of all of the Jewish thinkers agree that something happened there which changed and which established who we are. For the very Orthodox, all the holiest Jewish texts of all time were whispered into Moses' ear at that time. The Talmud, the Mishnah, everything came down at that one moment. To the modern Orthodox, every single letter of the Torah without fail came down to Moses, and then from Moses to the over 2 million Israelites. To the conservative, well, we're not really sure. We believe different things, a wide gamut. Either it was a whole Torah or just the 10 Commandments. But among the Reform, even most of their thinkers say something happened there. At least God spoke the 10 Commandments. But all agree that Mount Sinai was the wedding. And without a wedding, there is not much. Just a funny people with a sense of humor who did a good job of surviving through the ages. But the wedding gives us a purpose in addition to all of it. And what was it? Something that was given? What was given was a belief that us small human beings that we are can accomplish outsized acts in our world of goodness, of holiness, of transformation. And as small as we are, we can meet our Creator, and within that experience of meeting, be liberated from our own smallness, from our own worries, and that we can find the greatness of being an empowered human being walking through the world with a mission. And that ideas and thoughts could come rushing into our mind that we had no ideas were there, because that is what is revelation after all. That those ideas could help us be agents of transforming the world. And that there is a fundamental purpose to being alive. And it's so easy to get lost and think that all the other things are what it's all about. But a few times a year, we come back and we read this story of what happened at the mountain to contemplate how we ourselves can find that mountain in our own lives. How? By becoming, as the Midrash says, empty like the desert, hefker, ownerless, emptying ourselves of all of the stuff that we're filled with so that our cups are empty to receive the new revelation. And to be as a calm and peaceful sheet of white fire on which the black letters of black fire of the Torah were written and engraved. And sometimes that search for the mountain comes at points in our lives when we just know we need something new. And other times it just comes, or we ask for it or not. But most of the time it comes when we're in Egypt, when we're having a challenging time and we're feeling constrained and the way we've been doing everything doesn't seem to be working anymore. And then we cry out and we say we need a new way to live because the way we used to live doesn't work for us anymore. So we head into the desert and we go looking for the mountain, seeking the new. One of the truths, at least in my mind, that has become increasingly clear over the last few years of the pandemic, but also all the other stuff going on in our world, is how much we're in need of a new revelation, how much we're in need of a new way of being, and how so many of the old ways of being and doing are being challenged. All the ways we've been living as a humanity, as a world, as a nation, are no longer quite working the way they were working. And the truths that we fought so hard to are no longer quite alive with the same force. That's perhaps why it is time for the world to go searching for the mountain again, for revelation, and for a new Torah. So I end, Master of the world, Ribono Sha'olam, as we read once again of the mountain trembling and your voice speaking, lead us back to the mountain, that we may find new sparks and new truths, to take our broken world one step closer to the world that you intended it to be, a new way of being for our road ahead. Shabbat Shalom.